when I was newly single after my 2-year relationship ended. I was back to living alone again and back to swiping on Tinder and all those apps. I had been single for a few months already, and I had met a few people in that time. During that time, I matched a girl on Tinder named Tracy, and she gave me her Snapchat. But it quickly fizzled out to her just watching my stories and not really communicating. That kind of used to happen all the time when I was in college, but now, being in my late 20s, using Tinder and just being reminded of how immature all this online dating stuff is, it feels a lot different at this age. I own a corner townhome in a little community. If you're wondering what I do, I'm an accountant, good money, but miserably boring. After my ex moved out, I thought I would be ready for the privacy and peace and quiet. But I'd say after the first month, the novelty of that wore off. Maybe I'm more of a relationship person, or I just need people around, but being alone was getting to me. That's why I was constantly swiping on dating apps and trying to go on dates just to get out of the house. This was last December. I posted something on my Snap story that had to do with Christmas, and guess who commented on my story? It was that Tracy girl who I hadn't spoken to in weeks. She struck up a conversation about us doing some Christmas-themed stuff together, and from there, we started chatting for a bit. I suggested the most festive things I could think of: ice skating, going to the village and looking at the decorations, but she suggested we decorate my Christmas tree. Firstly, I did have a fake tree, but it was up in the attic. So I told her I didn't have it up yet, because it's kind of a 2-person job getting it out of the attic. She said she'd gladly come over and help, so I figured, why not? I told her to come over around 9 o'clock that night. It was already dark at that point when we made the plan. Man, it was likely like 7:30, because I remember hurriedly grabbing my keys and rushing to drive to the liquor store to buy a couple bottles of wine. When I got back to the house, I vacuumed and swept the floors. Ever since my breakup, the things my girlfriend would do to clean the place were left to me. And I realized how quickly a place can get dirty. 9 o'clock p.m. rolled around, and I was low-key sitting upright on the couch with the TV on, pretending like I was just chilling in the living room watching a movie already. Meanwhile, I had set everything up to be cozy and relaxing. But I sat there for a while waiting on her to message me or for the doorbell. I sent a follow-up saying, "Let me know when you're on your way." And I eventually started to think she was flaking until finally around 9:30, when she said she's outside. She came inside, and I was shocked to find that I was looking up at her. She was a couple inches taller than me. I'm 5'10", so she had to be at least 6 feet tall. I also immediately picked up on the fact that she smelt like she was drenched in perfect perfume. We went straight to the couch and sat down, and she sat really close to me, like our legs were touching. This is where I started to get confused in how exactly I was feeling. She looked a bit older, maybe a little rougher. I'm not sure how to explain it, and underneath that overpowering smell of cheap-smelling perfume, I couldn't help but feel like there was a slight hint of body odor, which completely turned me off. I asked her if she wanted wine, and she said, "Yes, please." So I went and poured a couple glasses. As we talked, have you ever met someone for the first time that you've been texting or DMing for a while? And when you finally meet, they just end up being nothing like you pictured in your head? That was pretty much this. Something about her felt off, like she lacked certain social cues. I handed her a glass of Merlot, and we cheersed each other. Iced you not. She almost immediately spilled a huge drop of red wine on my light blue couch. I composed myself, but I wanted to scream. I said, "It's okay," as I ran to the kitchen to get a damp paper towel and sponge. I ran back to the couch and blotted it as quickly as I could before it would settle. She kept apologizing, and I kept saying it was okay. After this, it got a little more tense, and to break the tension, I suggested I get the tree out of the attic. So, I went up to the attic, slid over the giant box with all the tree parts in it, and started handing her down the pieces one by one. Each piece getting bigger until we got to the biggest part, the part that I wouldn't be able to handle going down the ladder on my own. She grabbed it with ease. I had to remember this girl's size. Once everything was handed down, I went back down, and we assembled the tree in the living room with Christmas music playing. I poured her more wine, and I drank more myself. I loosened up a bit. More wine makes any situation feel better. Once we had the tree set up, next was the ornaments. I told her my ornaments were all in the crawl space. These ornaments were all from my childhood. My parents gave me bins and bins of Christmas decorations, so I went down to the crawl space and, one by one, started taking out the bins while I left Tracy in the living room to relax. As I was doing all of this, I started feeling woozy, like the wine was getting to my head. I've never been a heavy drinker, so I do have a low tolerance. But I felt like I hadn't drank that much to feel this way. I grabbed the first bin and started lugging it up the stairs. By the time I got to the top, Tracy wasn't anywhere in sight. I assumed she was in the bathroom at first and called her name. I looked around each room and then saw that the bathroom was empty. I scratched my head in confusion as I kept calling her name. I went to message her on Snap, but she never opened the Snap. I checked the 2 bedrooms too, but she was gone. I couldn't believe this. She snuck out on me. This was when I started wondering if she thought I was ugly or weird or something. Even though, truthfully, I wasn't even really into her either. I crashed onto the couch, which suddenly felt a lot more comfortable than before, and honestly, as far as I remember. I periodically checked my phone to see if she opened my Snap, and just watched whatever was on TV until my memory just faded to black. I swear everything just went music black, and then I woke up in darkness, no lights, no TV on. I looked around in the dark room, and I knew I was hearing things. I felt like I was still on the couch, and I felt weak. My limbs were hard to move, but I managed to find my phone right under me within seconds, and I checked the time. The second the phone screen lit up, I saw it. Even though the light was facing toward me, that glow from my phone screen with the brightness all the way up revealed the outline of a tall person's silhouette standing in front of me. For some reason, I didn't scream. I just put the phone down, bringing the room back to darkness. I finally opened my mouth to say, "Tracy," hoping it was her, but still not in that moment remembering what had happened earlier. Whoever was standing there didn't answer me. I eventually picked my phone back up and turned on the flashlight. And I saw that it was, in fact, Tracy standing in front of me. She wasn't moving. She was just looking down at me. I felt locked to the couch. I don't know if it was because of pure fear or the effects of whatever she had obviously laced me with. I genuinely was having a hard time moving my limbs. I felt weak and helpless. All I could manage to say was, "Tracy," a couple more times. She turned towards the stairs, and again, I swear she sprinted toward them. And all I heard were the disturbingly loud stomps of her running down the stairs. I heard something slam from downstairs. Looking back, I'd imagine it was the front door. Everything looked and sounded so wonky in those minutes after I woke up. Each passing minute, I felt more and more clear-headed, and moving became easier. I checked Snapchat to see that her account was gone. She blocked me. I looked out the front window and saw no cars outside besides my own and the neighbors'. And then I realized I never saw the vehicle that she arrived in, or if she even arrived in one. I checked my entire home from top to bottom. checking for anything that could have been stolen. The only items I found missing seemed kind of bizarre at first, but honestly made so much sense soon after. Every last bottle of pills from my house was gone. All my vitamins and supplements, my bottles of Adderall, and even the bottle of Oxy that I had prescribed but never fully used after a surgery. Those were in the drawer next to my bed. I noticed a bottle of vodka was taken from my mini fridge in my room too. But other than that, I didn't see anything else that could have been stolen. Still, I called the police right then and reported the robbery. I gave the Snapchat username and explained that I never got her number or knew anything really about her identity, minus the name that she gave me, which was Tracy Gibson. The police knocked on my neighbor's door, since all of our homes are attached. Even though it was like 1:00 a.m., with me standing next to them. They questioned if he'd seen or heard anything strange, to which he said no. He'd been asleep. After about 20 minutes, the police left. I made sure all of my keys were still in place so as to make sure she couldn't get back in. But other than that, this Tracy person disappeared without a trace. I knew her behavior was quirky and wonky from the first few minutes of meeting her, and it makes so much sense now. I won't even call it a theory, because I just know this is the truth. I think that girl, or woman I should say, was older than she claimed, and she was potentially homeless with a serious drug addiction. I think she drowned herself in perfume to mask the body odor that was honestly still showing through. She laced my wine with something when I was in the attic, clearly. I don't know exactly how long I was out, but it was enough for her to scour my entire home for any and all drugs and supplements. I still remember how disturbing of an image it was. Seeing her tall silhouette standing in front of me while I was just waking up on the couch. Honestly, after this, I didn't even decorate the tree that year. This happened on Christmas Eve back in '97, when I was 7 years old. Since we're Jewish, we don't celebrate Christmas, so Christmas Eve was just like any other night for us. Our dad is a doctor, and since he's Jewish, he always works on call at the hospital during the Christmas holidays, so he wasn't home tonight. That just left my little sister and I by ourselves for the evening while our dad worked. Technically, our mom was home, but to be blunt, she was an alcoholic back then. Being a 7-year-old, I had no idea what alcoholism was. All I knew was that my mom was always passed out once it got dark and near impossible to wake up. Sorry if it sounds harsh or TMI, but it's relevant to my story. My sister and I were downstairs watching TV when we heard a knock at the door. Being the oldest, I went to see who it was. Our door had glass panes built into it, which made it easy to see who was on the other side. There was a man standing outside in a Santa suit, holding a bag. And when he saw me, he smiled and waved at me to come to the door. I went near the door, but did not open it. And I thought it was odd that someone dressed like Santa would come to our house out of anyone's house in the neighborhood. He said, "Hey kid, it's me, Santa. Let me in. I'll give you your presents." I remember point blank telling him that Santa isn't real, and that if he was, he doesn't give Jews presents anyway. That's when he said, "Of course, I'm real." In the past, I only used to visit Christian homes, but lately, I felt bad that Jewish kids never get any presents. So this year, I changed the rules so that you can get presents too. But I didn't buy it, and instead, I remember getting mad at him, arguing that Jews get presents. We just get them during Hanukkah and not on Christmas. The smile fell from his face, and all his jolly charm disappeared as he began demanding I open the door. I told my sister to dial 911, and the guy seemed to run away. We did call the cops, however. Unfortunately, the operator didn't understand what we were saying. Looking back, I think she may have thought we were just little kids excited that Santa Claus was coming to our house. Regardless, she didn't take us seriously, and instead just told us that this number was to be used for emergencies only before disconnecting the call. My sister and I now got really scared because we didn't know who else to call, since we were only 4 and 7. The only numbers we knew how to dial were our home number and 911, and since this is the 90S. My dad didn't have a cell phone yet, and I had no idea what the hospital number was to reach him there. And with our mom impossible for us to wake up, we were essentially on our own. We hoped the man wouldn't come back, but a few minutes later, he was knocking on the door again. He said he knew the cops weren't coming and to go ahead and let him in, or we'd be in big trouble. My sister started crying and ran upstairs, trying to wake my mom. Not knowing what else to do, I did the one thing that made sense to my 7-year-old brain. I grabbed a bunch of candles we keep for our menorah and lit them all, then ran below where the smoke detector was. I blew out all the candles quickly before tossing them all up to the smoke detector. Thankfully, they gave off enough smoke to set off the smoke alarm. As an adult, I realized how stupid this was, and fortunately, I did not accidentally set the house on fire. But at that time, all I knew was that the smoke alarm would instantly call 911 for me and send help to our home. There was a fire department not even 2 minutes from our house, so they got here pretty fast. My sister came downstairs, scared of the fire alarm, but I told her there was no fire and to not go outside, but instead wait inside with me. To my amazement, the guy still did not leave. Instead, the bastard ran to the firefighters, presumably telling them that he was glad they showed up. I remember that he claimed he was my dad, and that he dressed up like Santa Claus for Christmas Eve to surprise us. He explained that his suit didn't have any pockets to hold his keys, and that with the door locked. He couldn't get the door open to save us from the fire, so he begged the firefighters to break down the door. And surprisingly, the firefighter seemed to believe him. They were actually getting ready to break down the door and told us to stand back, but we started crying, shouting at them that he's not our dad, that our dad is working at the hospital, and that we have no idea who this guy was, and that we don't even celebrate Christmas. The firefighter who was about to break down the door thankfully stopped and listened to us. He asked, "You don't celebrate Christmas?" I told him no because we're Jewish, and showed him my kippah on my head as well as our menorah. I then broke down crying, explaining how I set off the smoke alarm to try and get help, because the police wouldn't believe us, and so please not let the guy in. The firefighter thankfully believed me, and then asked the guy why Santa would show up to a Jewish home. I don't remember exactly what the guy said, but the firefighters clearly didn't believe him. 2 of them wrestled the guy to the ground while the other called the police to come by. They also asked what hospital my dad worked at, so they could let him know what was going on. The police arrived and arrested the guy, while another officer stayed with us until my dad came home and explained the situation to him. My dad was furious with our mom for being wasted and essentially sleeping through the whole thing, but mostly, he was grateful that we were okay. As far as Christmases go, I was glad to have our usual boring and quiet Christmas the following year. To this day, I think being Jewish saved my sister and I's lives because, had we opened that door to let Santa in, there's a good chance that would have been our final Christmas. It was December 2022. My girlfriend Charlotte and I were driving to the Pocono Mountains. We had rented a super cozy-looking Airbnb decked out with Christmas decorations. And it was nicely located with a nice view, big property, and not far from a cute little village. To make things even more festive feeling, there was a snowstorm coming that night. So we set out on the road a little earlier to allow us time to get groceries and everything set up in the Airbnb. From the city to the Poconos was about 4 hours. We made decent time. We stopped at a Family Dollar for some snacks and groceries, and then we went straight to the Airbnb. We turned towards the uphill gravel road through a clearing in the trees that led to the property. The house was surrounded by woods. It had a big deck with a hot tub on it, which was very appealing, especially the idea of sitting in it during a snowstorm. There were a bunch of Christmas decorations on the property, including some light-up reindeer, a big snowman, and big decorative candy canes lining the walkway to the front deck. We had to take a few trips to and from the car to bring everything inside. First impression, the place had a very comfy feeling, as we expected from the pictures. It had a Christmas tree in one corner, stockings hung on the walls, and a bunch of smaller decorations scattered about. It had that very welcoming smell of wood that you'd expect in a country log cabin, though it was more so just a regular house. Then I realized why. There was a stack of logs next to a big fireplace in the living room. There were 3 bedrooms though, of course. We only needed 1. We put our luggage and such in a second bedroom. I did the usual stuff like inspect the fridge, turn on the TV to see if there's cable or Netflix, and look out all the windows. There was an upstairs, but it was more of a loft with a pool table and a couple of couches. Then there was a basement. For the hell of it, I went down to check out the basement. It was fairly big relative to the size of the house. It felt disconnected from the Airbnb though. It wasn't furnished for hanging out in. It was dark and cold and felt more like a space to do laundry in, a workspace. Then there was a knock at the front door. I hurried up to answer it, and there was a guy who looked to be in his late 40s. He was wearing gray sweatpants and a ripped-up yellowish-brown jacket. He smiled at me and said, "How are you folks doing?" I replied, "Good," and asked him if he was the Airbnb host. He replied he runs the place with his brother. I asked for his name, and he said, "Tom." Tom said he lives just up the road next door if my girl and I need anything. I thanked him, and then he walked away. I found it interesting that he knew I was with my girlfriend. Charlotte didn't come to the door, but maybe his brother told him about us. I did have a conversation with Mike, the host, about it being my girlfriend and I wanting to do something festive. It was pitch black out, and it was snowing. We cranked up the heat in the house and started preparing the dinner we bought, which was chicken thighs, broccoli, potatoes, and cornbread. It was pretty grab bag. We ate on the couch with the Christmas tree lights on in the corner, giving the room a nice, comfy glow as we watched the Polar Express. It was the only good Christmas movie on any of the streaming platforms. If you can't tell, we really love Christmas. After the movie, and when we felt we had digested enough, we went outside to the deck to hop in the hot tub. I turned on all the decorations and Christmas lights in the front yard, and as we sat in the hot tub watching the snowfall, it felt like bliss until the bubbles on the hot tub stopped, and it went silent. We heard unmistakable footsteps from somewhere on the property. Charlotte and I looked at one another. I asked her if I should shout, "Who's there?" but she said no. The footsteps moved further and further until they were no longer audible. I told Charlotte it was probably a deer, but deep down, I knew those were the footsteps of a person. After the hot tub, we went to take a shower before bed. The hot water in the shower didn't last for more than maybe 2 minutes though. Something was wrong. When the water turned ice cold, we screamed and jumped out of the shower. I messaged Mike, the host, about it. He responded within half an hour, saying, "That's odd, and that he'll have a guy come and look at the hot water heater tomorrow." We went to sleep after our half shower. In the middle of the night though, we awoke to very aggressive bangs on the front door of the house. Charlotte was shaking me, terrified. I said, "I'm going to check who it is," but she demanded I stay in the bed and don't make a sound. Honestly, I was glad she said that. No part of me wanted to know who was at the door in the middle of the night. I think there were 3 sets of really loud and angry-sounding bangs before they stopped. We sat upright for a few minutes in silence, whispering to each other. I went over to lock the bedroom door for added security, I guess. Minutes dragged along, but ultimately, after about half an hour of sitting wide awake, we eventually drifted back off to sleep. First thing in the morning, I messaged Mike again about the knocks at the door. He answered more quickly this time, seeming pretty confused like us. He basically said how strange that is. He didn't know why anyone would be roaming around late at night like that. He said if anything like that happens again, that we should alert the authorities. Honestly, not the most reassuring response, but I mean, he was right. What else could he tell us? Grab a gun and shoot whoever was at the door. I didn't want to keep complaining to Mike constantly, but I mean, these were some valid concerns I was bringing up to him. There was a lot of snow outside, and it was a dark, cloudy day. There were still some flurries falling onto the ground. I went out to wipe the snow off my Jeep, and while I was doing so, I noticed footsteps in the snow. They looped around the house. I remembered the knocks from the night before and wondered if it was from the same person. But these footprints looked fresh, and it snowed all night. Surely, the footprints from last night would have filled in by now. I heard footsteps approaching now actually, and I saw Tom walking from around my car. I told him about the hot water heater problem and that Mike said they were sending someone to take a look at it. He said he knew and that he was here to take a look at it actually. I also told him about the knocks at the door last night and the footprints in the snow. I even showed him. He looked at them and said, "There's a lot of strange folk out here that go snooping around at night." I asked if we should refrain from using the hot tub at night then, and he said no, that shouldn't be a problem. The people around here are harmless. He went inside into the house and walked around for a bit before walking down to the basement. He told me he'll have a look at the hot water heater. Tom seems like a weird dude, honestly. I messaged Mike, saying Tom's here now, checking out the water heater. Mike replied back asking, "Is Tom the name of the plumber?" And I replied, "No, your brother." He replied, "What do you mean? He's my brother." It started to click in my head. I responded, "Do you have a brother named Tom who runs this Airbnb with you?" And he replied, "No, who is this person?" I hurried to Charlotte and told her to collect her things quietly. We need to get out of here as quickly as we could. We packed our bags, grabbed all of our stuff, and brought it outside to the car in one trip. I'm sure we left behind a charger or something small, but who cares? We got in my car, and when I started it, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Tom quickly approaching the rear of the Jeep. I put it in drive and drove out of there as quickly as I could. When we were back on the road, we called Mike and explained everything and told him he needs to call the police now. He didn't stay on the line with us for long, but 20 minutes later, he called us back. We were in the car still. He said the police were there now and didn't see anyone in the house. Mike was on his way to the house as well, but he was mostly calling to get more details from us. We drove around the area and explored, just as a way to calm our nerves after what just happened. After a few hours, we drove home. Mike messaged me later that night, updating me and apologizing for everything. He said he didn't know anyone who resembled my description of Tom. What disturbs me is that man was watching us the entire time, from the moment we arrived to when we were in the hot tub. And he was probably the one banging on the front door in the middle of the night. Who knows what his intentions were? It's a good thing we left when we did, though.